said exactly what he thought yesterday in his remarks, and I would refer you back to those. Josh. Sorry, go ahead.
And also, does the president see the interference in the 2016 election and possibly in the midterms as an attack on democracy, American democracy? The Secretary for Homeland Security said that it was an attack on American democracy, but the president said that the Democrats are weak, that Republicans basically had better systems. Does he see it as an issue of American democracy or just his opponents being attacked?
Again, the president thinks that we have to focus on securing our election integrity and our election systems, which is why he has spent so much time with his administration making sure that this doesn't happen again. Let's not forget that this didn't happen under President Trump's watch. This happened under the Obama administration. We're taking steps. We're making bold reforms to try to fix this and make sure it never happens again because we take it seriously and because we recognize that our election system are incredibly important and is certainly a cornerstone of our democracy. Josh.
The president spent 2 hours. The president spent 2 hours and 10 minutes with Vladimir Putin. Was there a deal made on Syria? Was there a deal made on anything? Can you give us any sense of what came out of that meeting?
Certainly, as the president said, a number of issues were raised, including Syrian humanitarian aid, Iran's nuclear ambition, Israeli security, North Korean denuclearization, Ukraine and the occupation of Crimea, reducing Russian and U.S. nuclear arsenals, and of course, your favorite topic, Russia's interference in our elections. All of these issues were talked about. This is the beginning of the dialogue with Russia and our administration and theirs, and we're going to continue working through those things. But those were all of the topics, and certainly probably others that were covered.
Follow up on a number of issues, from the annexing of Crimea to election meddling. The president seems to have spent more time criticizing his predecessor, Barack Obama, for letting it happen in his telling than Vladimir Putin. Do you have any sense why the president has not been more critical of Putin for some of these events that the entire world stage has really gone after him about?
Look, I think the president, as he has said many times before, has been tougher on Russia than anybody. I think you can see that in all of the actions that he's taken, whether it was a plant that was closed due to aluminum and steel tariffs that were put in place by this president. The Treasury Department has issued new sanctions on numerous individuals and entities in Russia. The president has continued sanctions on Russia's malicious cyber activity in response to election hacking. We've expelled 60 Russian operatives from the United States and closed 2 consulates. President Trump issued 4 statements condemning Russia's poisoning of UK citizens on UK soil, authorized the sale of lethal aid to Ukraine, authorized military strikes against the Assad regime in Syria, and has repeatedly called out Russia's actions, exporting energy to our allies in Eastern Europe. Look, the president has been extremely tough on Russia, and to say anything different is just not true.
So why is he critical of other world leaders by name far more often than Vladimir Putin? Why won't he criticize Putin by name?
I think he has. I think he has called them out for interfering our election. He's been tough on Russia repeatedly, and he's taken action against Russia on a number of fronts that I just listed off.
Like Monday,
when
he was beside him on Monday, though, why wasn't he critical of Vladimir Putin's actions?
Look, they had a number of conversations. The president discussed some of these things directly, face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. He addressed him again yesterday. The president also sees this as an opportunity, as he said many times, to be able to work with Russia. He recognizes the fact that 90% of the world's nuclear weapons are under the direction of the United States and Russia. He thinks it's a good thing to get along with the other person that controls that much of the nuclear arsenal across the globe. He wants to create a more stable world, a more peaceful world, and we can't do that if we can't get along with Russia in some capacity. And so certainly we've called him out. We've been tough. We've approached this in a totally different fashion than has been previously done, because what's been done in the past hasn't worked. So we're trying a new approach, but to act like he hasn't been tough on Russia, that he hasn't called them out, is simply not true, and it simply completely changes everything that this administration has done in regards to that country. Josh, I'm going to keep going. Justin?
Sarah, a minute ago you described the negative impacts of the trade conflict with China as short term, but that's only true if we're able to strike a better deal. And from the outside, since the tariffs went on more 2 weeks ago, it seems like those negotiations have broken down. So I'm wondering if you could tell us what the status of them are, why the Treasury Secretary isn't meeting one-on-one with China when he's in Argentina for the G20, and what it would take from the Chinese or from the U.S. to restart those talks.
Look, I'm not going to negotiate with you guys. I'm going to leave that to Secretary Mnuchin and Ambassador Lighthizer. We're continuing to have conversations with China. We're continuing to look for ways that we can have a better trade deal with them. Steve?
I want to follow up on Maggie's question, because she asked about the idea that Putin offered of essentially allowing Robert Mueller and his investigators to go to Russia to oversee or witness the interrogations of the Russian military intelligence officers if the U.S. would reciprocate and have Russian investigators come here to watch American citizens face questions about the crimes that they allegedly committed in Russia. The president called it an interesting idea. He said it was an incredible offer. Why would he say that?
He said it was an interesting idea. He didn't commit to anything. He wants to work with his team and determine if there's any validity that would be helpful to the process. But again, we've committed to nothing, and it was an idea that they threw out.
Sarah, some Democrats on Capitol Hill now are saying that they want to drag the translator who was in the room with the president and Vladimir Putin before congressional committees to find out exactly what was said in their private meeting. Is that something that the White House would ever support?
That's something that would go through the State Department. Mike?
The list of subjects you went through as far as for the one-on-one meeting, unless I missed it, were sanctions discussed at all? Did the president bring it up, or did President Putin bring it up to President Trump?
I'm not aware. I'd have to ask to be sure. Hallie?
I just wanted to ask you just one quick one. Yesterday, the president's revision, it was kind of seen widely that he was leaving himself a little bit of room when he said there could have been others too who meddled. Was he referring to any specific intelligence on that, or was that his instinct then?
Certainly the president receives a number of briefings and has talked about this subject pretty extensively. We're aware of others that have made attempts, but I can't get into any of that here at this point. Hallie?
Two questions for you, and I want to just clarify something you talked about at the beginning of the briefing. So despite the video that shows the president looking at Cecilia and answering no to this question about whether Russia is still targeting the U.S., and despite multiple people in the room understanding that the president was responding to that question, and despite the president having never before said the word no, no repeatedly to usher reporters out of the room, you're saying it's reverse. You're saying the president said, this is
The first thing that the
time.
president said after the question was asked was, "Thank you very much," and then he said, "No, I'm not answering any more questions." And even further, I think even Cecilia didn't realize what the answer was because she asked for clarification and he didn't answer the follow-up. Again, because she wasn't sure. I talked to the president. He wasn't answering that question. He was saying no, he's not taking questions, and I've stated what our position is.
Let me get to my question, Sarah, because I haven't actually asked it yet, which is the president, now this is the second time in 3 days that the president of the White House has come out and reversed what the president has said. To the
Actually,
opposite of what it was
I'm
perceived,
interpreting
Sarah.
what the president said.
But
I'm not
was
reversing
perceived
it.
the opposite way. Why
I was
should
in
this
the room as
president-
well, and I didn't take it the way you did.
But why should this president have any credibility to Americans in what he says if, in fact, 24 hours later, or in this case, 3 hours later, the White House comes out and says, just kidding?
First of all, that's not what I said. I was interpreting what the president's intention was and stating the administration's policy. It's not exactly what you just explained. We never said just kidding. And I think that you can take the fact that the president has credibility because he saw that he had misspoken, and he wanted to clarify that yesterday, which he did. So when he sees that he's misspoken, he comes out and he says that. Jordan.
Follow up on
Sorry, I'm
Josh.
gonna
The
keep
second
moving.
question, you
Jordan,
told
go ahead.
Josh, well, just to follow up on my second question, Sarah.
Sorry,
you told Josh,
you've asked
I did
two.
have, I
I'm gonna
had
move on
two.
to Jordan.
You told Josh the president has been
Once again,
publicly
Hallie, I'm
critical
moving
of
on to
Vladimir.
Jordan. Jordan, go ahead.
You said,
Sorry, Hallie, go ahead if you want.
thanks, Jordan. You said to
Actually,
Josh,
I'm
the
gonna take a
president
question
has been
from
publicly
Jordan.
critical of Vladimir Putin. I just want to know when, because I don't think any of us remember, at least I don't remember a time when the president has publicly called up Vladimir Putin.
I think by stating the fact that the president said that Russia interfered with our election, that's a pretty bold call out of another world leader. Jordan, go ahead.
Senators Rubio and Van Hollen have introduced legislation that would impose new sanctions on Russia if the intelligence agencies find they meddle in the 2018 midterms or in the future. Would the President Trump support a proposal like that?
I'm not going to get into a hypothetical situation until we see a final piece of legislation and also determination if there's election meddling. Again, our goal is to stop that from happening, which is why we've spent such a significant amount of time in the first year and a half of our administration focusing on protecting the election integrity system. John,
included with that, Sarah, is voter suppression?
John, go ahead.
Sarah, is voter suppression
Sorry.
included with that,
Guys,
please?
if we could go on the
I'm just
people that
asking you
I've
a question
called
because
on.
you choose not to call on me. Is voter suppression part of that election process that the president is trying to look for?
John, go ahead.
Oh, you're not going to answer that?
If
Voter
I call on
suppression
you, I'll
is a
be
huge
happy to
issue
answer
that a
your
community in
question.
America
John, go
has
ahead.
asked about. You're not going to answer me.
John, go ahead.
That's all right, fine.
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to ask you about the immediate reaction to the president's comments that he made at that joint press conference in Helsinki. It was immediate. Every cable channel, Fox, NBC, CNN, reacted immediately to the suggestion the president made that he did not believe that Russia interfered in the U.S. presidential election. I got my inbox inundated with emails from Republican members of Congress with their reaction immediately. And 24 hours, it took 24 hours for the president to correct the record. Why did it take so long for the president to clarify the comments that he made at that press conference?
Look, the president put out an initial tweet after boarding Air Force One that clarified his comments on the intelligence community, wanted to make sure that was clear, and at the very first chance he had in a public setting the following day, he clarified his comments. And I don't think that it was that long for that to be the very first public appearance that he had following arriving back to the United States.
So actually, it's a pretty long time, and it was out there for quite a bit.
It wasn't actually 24 hours before he responded at all. Again, he put out an initial tweet from Air Force One.
Comment on this to clarify his remarks to change the would to wouldn't, or the wouldn't to would. And I think that a lot of people would argue that there was ample time for the president. He tweets all the time from Air Force One.
And he tweeted that night.
To put out a statement which clarified what he meant to say during the joint news conference, and he didn't do that. Why? What took so long is my question.
Once he reviewed the transcript, he wanted to publicly address the clarification, in which he did.
There are currently efforts within Congress to impeach Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Is that something that the White House would support for lack of cooperation in turning over documents to Congress?
The president's made clear he'd like all documents to be turned over, but we're continuing to work with our Department of Justice. I don't have anything further on that. Jim, go ahead.
To follow up on that, would the White House denounce that effort then? Do they have confidence within the Deputy Attorney General?
The president would like to see the documents turned over. When the president no longer has confidence in someone, his administration will let you know. Jim.
Sure. On Friday at the press conference with Prime Minister May, I asked the president as he was leaving whether or not he would tell Vladimir Putin to stay out of U.S. elections. As he was leaving with Prime Minister, he said yes. Did the president tell Vladimir Putin at their summit in Helsinki to stay out of U.S. elections?
Certainly the president, as both he and President Putin said, discussed election meddling. I think we've made very clear what our position is on that front.
You're saying that they discussed election meddling, but did the president of the United States tell the president of Russia to stay out of U.S. elections?
The president has made clear to Vladimir Putin that he should stay out of U.S. elections. Sorry, I'm going to keep moving. April, go ahead.
Was there a recording
Sorry, Jim,
made?
I'm going to take a couple last questions.
Was there a recording made of their one-on-one meeting?
Does that exist? I'm not aware of one.
So Sarah, since you keep saying that the president is very concerned about the election process, you talk about what he's doing. You did not mention voter suppression in that. Voter suppression has been an issue for decades. And particularly in these last few elections, is voter suppression now on the table? When he was talking about voter fraud, people were talking about voter suppression as well. Is voter suppression on the table as well?
We want to do everything within our power to protect the integrity of our elections, and we're going to look at that on a number of fronts. The reason I address these specific issues is because of Russia's involvement in our elections in the past. I'm going to take one last question. Right here,
Sarah, I want to change topic a minute, if I may. And go south.
Sure, I think that'd be fine.
Thank you. So the incoming president of Mexico has made two very bold suggestions. Number one, he's looking at giving amnesty to the drug cartels operating within there. Today they come out and say they're seriously looking at legalizing all drugs in Mexico. Now, if they do that, obviously it's going to have a tremendous impact on the incoming amount of drugs into the United States. What is the president's position on that, and are they going to do anything to stop that from happening in Mexico?
Certainly, we're going to continue engaging with our Mexican partners. I don't have a specific policy announcement on that front. However, I can say that we would not support the legalization of all drugs anywhere, and certainly wouldn't want to do anything that would allow more drugs to come into this country. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Sarah, what's the administration doing about foreign disinformation and use of social media to swing elections?
Good times. Good times.
Yeah.